welcome in to the inaugural episode of Back of the Net. This channel's soccer-specific show. We'll be doing probably 2 of these a week. One, previewing, one reviewing. Mostly going to focus on the English football system, mostly the 1st through 4th tiers, but if it's a soccer story and it's interesting, it will be here. So tonight, big show, because as you are watching this, or actually it's not tonight, it's tomorrow when this is going to debut, but this is being filmed on Thursday night. We're doing Premier League predictions as the season's only a few hours away from kickoff, and like I said, filmed Thursday night. Was originally supposed to be Wednesday night. A lot of things have changed in these past 24 hours, which have changed my predictions. So we're going to mention things that have happened. If things happen past this point, it's not going to get mentioned on the show because I wouldn't have known about it. But let's just get straight into these predictions. I'll be going from 20-1, giving kind of my thoughts on each team and why I think they'll finish in that position. So let's get underway. So the team I have finishing in 20th at the bottom of the table is a recently promoted side. A lot of people are kind of feeling like this team is going to go down, and I completely agree with them, and it is Luton Town. Just recently promoted this year, like I said, won the playoff to get here, their first time in the Premier League since the early 90s. They haven't done enough to this squad, I believe, that's going to help them to clinch safety. It's a club that was in the 5th tier 10 years ago. They've slowly climbed up the English system these past 10 years, now at the top of it. And, they like their own strategy. Before this season, their highest ever purchase of a player was around $2 million. So they're not one to throw around the money. And I don't see a way for them to stay up this year. But, there is always a chance that something crazy will happen. I do believe that this is one of the more weaker Premier Leagues of all time, which could give Luton hope of staying up. So in 19th, a squad that I actually had finishing right around 12th or 13th before things happened this week, and that is Wolverhampton Wanderers. You might be saying, well, why such a big drop? Julian Lopetegui, their manager, was parted of ways. I believe that was Tuesday afternoon, somewhere around there. So he's no longer the manager there. He had a 9-month stint after getting sacked from Sevilla early last season. And now it is Gary O'Neill taking over. He was the interim manager for Bournemouth last season, guided them to safety. He's obviously hoping to do the same with Wolves. But after, $100 million plus in selling this summer and really not investing it at all, I don't see a way for Wolverhampton to stay up this year. In 18th, another recently promoted side that just have not invested at all this offseason and actually have sold their 2 best players. It's Sheffield United. I just don't see a way for them to stay up. It's going to be a struggle for them. I think, I just said that their 2 best players got sold just recently. This is a team that was under a transfer embargo last year for, problems paying bills, which is, probably should do. And I think they're going to head straight back down to the championship next year and try to regroup from there, because this is not a Premier League squad that is going to be taking the field this season for Sheffield United. In 17th is a team that is, scratched and clawed with their fingernails to stay up the last 2 years, and they're going to do the exact same this year and just barely stay up, and that is Everton. Their final full season at Goodison Park, it's still to be decided if this is the final season, ever. they still have Jordan Pickford in that, which is going to win them games. But other than that, there's nothing really there, if we're honest. There's not a ton that's going to help them finish mid-table. If this weren't such a weak Premier League this year, I think Everton are easily straight down. But given that there are just some teams that just might be that much worse than them, I think they stay up this year. In 16th, I have Bournemouth, another team where if this wasn't such a weak Premier League, I think they go straight down. They did make a good signing, though, that happened today. Alex Scott, the, English center midfielder, he's a bright talent for the future of England. They signed him for £25 million from Bristol City. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays into this Bournemouth team. And like I said, if this was a stronger Premier League, they are going straight down. But given that there are just so many bad teams around them, I think they will stay up because of that and secure another season of Premier League football at the Vitality Stadium. In 15th, I have Crystal Palace, a team that I think, with the talent on the squad, should easily be a top 10 squad, or top 10 team, I should say. Keeping Roy Hodgson around, I feel like, is going to affect this Crystal Palace team for the worse. Roy Hodgson, great legend of the game. I feel like the time has somewhat passed him by. He just celebrated, I believe, his 78th birthday. Like I said, I think this Crystal Palace team has what it takes to be, a top 10 team in the Premier League this year. It's just, if this gets off to a rocky start and then you have to sack Roy Hodgson, there's really nowhere to go from there. I feel like you should have hired an actual manager this offseason and not stuck with Roy, but that's just my opinion. Given me saying that, they're going to finish, in 7th or something like that, and Roy's going to pull off another Hodgson masterclass of coaching. But obviously the big story is Eze. His last year of his contract. Will he leave before the transfer window closes, or will he just run out his contract with Crystal Palace until the end of the season? In 14th, I have Nottingham Forest, bolstered by a signing that they just made of Matt Turner, the U.S. goalkeeper. They look like they're still trying for Dean Henson from Manchester United. But I think the signing of Matt Turner, if he's going to be the number one for Forest this year, I think he can win them some games. I've, seen him play for the U.S. team. He's looked like a very good goalkeeper. He didn't have the chance to show that at Arsenal, given that he was a backup. But I think he can really help this Forest squad that, was basically all new purchases last year, now have had a year to develop and train together. I think that's going to be helpful for them and help them stay up this year. In 13th, I have the Europa Conference League winners, West Ham United. Obviously, they will be playing European football once again this year. They will be in the Europa League because they won the Conference League. And we saw how much that affected them last year. They were finishing near the bottom of the table because they were focusing on those European results. And I feel like that might happen again. You also lost your best player, Declan Rice, and you didn't really reinvest it until these past 48 hours. You signed Edson Alvarez. Looks like you might be getting Harry Maguire. But you still don't have that depth to be playing 2 games a week, basically. And I think that's going to really hurt West Ham this year once again. But I think they'll still finish top of the bottom half. In 12th, I have the last promoted team from this season, and it's Burnley. Vincent Kompany's building something special at Burnley, and he just played absolutely fantastic football last year in the Championship, and I expect that to carry over this year into the Premier League. I don't think they're finishing top half, but I think they'll finish top of the bottom half. It's just a question of can they stave off relegation, which I 100% believe they can. In 11th, I have Brentford. Thomas Frank, great manager for the Bees. They have obviously lost David Raya. He's off to Arsenal, which will be discussed when we get to Arsenal, given I don't get that situation. But I still think Brentford have enough to finish, like in an 11th. Ivan Toney's out until January due to the gambling ban. It's going to be interesting to see how that affects Brentford. I think they'll have a much better second half with him playing than they do a first half, which I believe is expected for this team this season, but they'll still be safely in the Premier League for next year. Now into the top half of the table, finishing in 10th, surprise team from last year. They finished 6th. They're in the Europa League this year. I believe it's their first European competition ever. That is Brighton and Hove Albion. I think, looks like they're losing Moises Caicedo. They're playing European football. I think they might be similar to what West Ham did last year, kind of focus on those European results. That's going to let their, league fixtures, go adrift, and they're going to end up finishing outside of a European spot. But, this team could, I believe, still finish in the 5 to 7 range, basically. I just think that they're going to finish in 10th. In 8th, now this may be controversial, but, they haven't really done much this summer up until now. And this is just basically breaking that they will be signing this player, but Liverpool, I have them finishing 8th. The player I'm obviously talking about is Moises Caicedo. It looks like they put in a bid of around £115 million, which would be a British record if he is sold for that, which it's expected Brighton will sell him for that. They also brought in McAllister, who's also from Brighton. I don't know if that's going to be enough to get Liverpool into, the top 7 into those European spots. Darwin Nunez has to show out this year. Same with Cody Gakpo, 2 players you spent a lot of money on last year that didn't really have the effect that you were hoping. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out this year. I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to finish in a European spot. In 7th, and I really debated on this a lot, and they have dropped a few places in the past 24 hours. I will tell you, I had them in a Champions League spot 24 hours ago when this was originally supposed to be filmed. They are now in 7th. It is Tottenham Hotspur. The news coming out today that Harry Kane is being sold, 72 hours before their first game of the year. It's absolutely gutting, but, sometimes you just got to move on. Hope that, they didn't, all the players that have been signed already was just the normal transfer budget this year. Now we got the Kane money to reinvest in the squad because there are definitely positions that need reinvesting. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I feel like the money spent this year was the Kane money, so it looks like he's off to Bayern Munich, and I believe that sends Tottenham from the Champions League spots to a Conference League spot. But fully will be testing the Ewing theory this year, which if you don't know, when a star leaves a team, that team ends up being more successful when that star was there. The namesake is Patrick Ewing. When he left the Knicks made the finals and looked like a better team without him. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out this year. In 6th, I have a team that finished in the Champions League spot last year. I think is going to take a dip in form this year, and that is Newcastle United. Draws don't win you games, obviously, and that's not going to win you Champions League spots. They had 12 or 13 draws last year. I think it's going to be similar this year, and, yes, you're getting points in the game, but you got to do something better than that. You got to get all 3 points, and I think that's really going to affect Newcastle this year, and that's why they're not going to finish in a Champions League spot. In fifth, I have a squad that a lot of people are high on. I'm not as high on them as other people are. I see some other people having them finish as high as like third. And that is Aston Villa. Yes, Unai Emery is a great manager. I think he's going to do great things this year. Yes, Aston Villa might be in the Champions League next year, but not because they finished in the top four. It's because they would have won Europa League. That is Unai Emery's, or no, they won't be in, they're in the Conference League this year, I'm sorry. So they will be playing European football next year, just not in the Champions League, I should have said. I think, if Emi Martinez stays as goalkeeper for Aston Villa, which it's looking like is going to happen, I 100% believe that they can finish as high as third, but I think they're going to finish in fifth and end up with Europa League no matter what next year. In fourth, I have a team that finished, I believe, in like 11th or 12th last year. So a squad that is going to be, on one game a week, basically, and that's Chelsea, and I think that's really going to help them. Obviously, they've brought in a lot of players, sent off a lot of players. It's kind of a newish squad. It's going to be interesting to see what Mauricio Pochettino can do with this squad. I think he gets them back to Champions League football next year. And that will be a big success given what they did last year. In third, I have the team that last year finished second in a one-horse race, and that is Arsenal. They've made some impact signings this year. Jurrien Timber, Declan Rice, David Raya, which David Raya signing kind of confuses me given that you just extended Aaron Ramsdale just like in May, and now you have two number one goalies, and one of them's going to be sitting on the bench. I think that's quite odd and a waste-ish of money, but I don't run Arsenal, so I think they're going to be good enough to finish third. It's just I don't think it will be enough to have them competing for a title again. So that leaves two teams left, which means they are both the Manchester clubs, and I think you kind of get the idea of which team's going to finish in first out of those two. But in second, I do have Manchester United. I think they're going to be a really good squad this year. I don't think they're going to be competing for the title. I think they'll finish in second, though. I think it's going to be a runaway, though, for the team that's going to win the title, which obviously if you can, figure it out, you can figure it out. But I think Erik ten Hag in his second season is going to have a better season than his first season. And I think he's starting to bring back Manchester United to where they were in the Sir Alex Ferguson days. And in first, of course, I have Manchester City winning their fourth title in a row. I just don't see anybody competing with them this year. Erling Haaland's probably going to have another 30-plus goal season. They have the squad depth for it, and I think it's going to be quite entertaining watching them this year, as they're just going to put on another outstanding performance from start to finish, and that's going to end with them winning the title once again. So now, given that we've run from 20-1 for the Premier League this season, my official predictions, we might as well take a look at what match week 1 is going to bring us. So tonight in England, it's afternoon here in the US. We have Burnley facing off against Manchester City. Manchester City are going to run away with this one, even though, Vincent Kompany, of course, is a Manchester City legend. Just not going to be enough to get them a win or a draw, and it's going to be City walking away with 3 points to begin the season. Then on Saturday, the early game, which was the 12:30 kickoff in England, 7:30 a.m. here in the U.S., and it is Arsenal against Nottingham Forest. You have Matt Turner most likely starting, as my guess, facing off against his former club. I don't think it's going to be enough to get them a win, though, and I think Arsenal win this game also. We have 4 games in the 10 o'clock window. That would be the 3 o'clock window in England. The first one is Bournemouth-West Ham. these two teams kind of going in the same direction this year, as you kind of could see by the predictions. Given that it's at home for Bournemouth, I think they might pull out the win, but this more feels like a 1-1 draw. Brighton and Hove Albion facing off against Luton Town, two teams that I think are going to finish somewhat opposite of the spectrum this year. I think Brighton and Hove Albion put up at least 2 goals here. I don't think Luton Town have enough to even get a point here unless they play super defensive and they end up with like a 0-0 draw. I don't see them getting points on Saturday. Everton versus Fulham. I think, like I said, this is going to be a rough season for Everton, which leads me to believe that Fulham win this game. And then we have Sheffield United against Crystal Palace in the final game of this 10 o'clock window. If Crystal Palace is fully healthy, I think they're going to win this game. But kind of like the Bournemouth-West Ham game, this more feels like a draw than it does a win for either team. And finally, in the 12:30 window, which is 5:30 window in the UK, in England, it is Newcastle United against Aston Villa, two teams that I think are going to be fighting for most likely a European spot this year. They might be fighting for a Champions League spot. Who knows? Again, this is another one that feels like a draw. But if a team had to pull away a win here, I think it might be Newcastle United, just given that it is a home game for them. Now on Sunday morning, again, afternoon in England, the 9 a.m., which is 2 p.m. kickoff in England, we have Brentford at home facing off against Tottenham. Tottenham will most likely be in the first game of the post-Harry Kane era. It will be interesting to see how they line up. I'm still backing them to win. Ange Postecoglou has got me bought into this squad that I think that they can win even without Harry Kane. I think they'll put up a few goals. But now that I say that, of course, Brentford will score in probably the 10th minute and win 1-0 because that's just bound to happen. And the last game in the Sunday window is a 11:30 a.m. kickoff here in America. It is that would be a 4:30 kickoff in England. It is Chelsea facing off against Liverpool, obviously two massive clubs. Mauricio Pochettino trying to get off on the right foot at Chelsea. And then Jurgen Klopp, I believe this is now his 8th or 9th season at Liverpool. Obviously trying to get that started off on a good note as well. I think this will also most likely be a draw. Probably like 2-2. And then the final game of this match in week 1 is on Monday evening, a 3 p.m. kickoff in the U.S. And it is going to be Manchester United at Old Trafford facing off against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolverhampton Wanderers are heading the absolute opposite direction that Manchester United are, which is going to leave Manchester United running away with this game. So given that was the first episode of Back in the Net, so hopefully you enjoyed. We will be back probably Monday, maybe Tuesday, to recap this week. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you just stumbled across it, like, subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. We will be back for another episode of Back of the Net.